Hey guys, Molten here. So when I went to this event, the first thing I noticed was a lot of the other kids had their own coaches and they're preparing and analyzing their games in between rounds. Of course I didn't have one at the time, but I was still preparing in my own different way. I discovered online chess a few months earlier, but I hadn't really gone into it just yet. Instead, I was mainly practicing using a computer program called Chessmaster 9000, which was really big at the time when it was launched. And later I discovered that one of the authors of the books I was reading, Josh Waitzkin, also did heaps of great videos on it. Of course, I looked through all the videos and later I went and watched the famous Searching for Bobby Fischer film, which was based on his life, and I found him to be absolutely the coolest chess player at the time. So I pretty much based my entire repertoire from his. So as he did in the film, when he was told not to bring his queen out too early, I also did the same thing and I played the Scandinavian. I also remember I played some French when I first started, and I also played the exchange French with the white pieces, which is exactly what he did as well. I remember sitting down for my games and feeling like I was exactly from one of the scenes from the movie. And I also scored many crucial wins with the exchange French, and I did extremely well with it until someone finally defused it a long time later. So this is just one of the crucial games from the event. I hope you enjoy it and I'll see you very shortly. So the following game I play against Adrian starts out as an exchange French. Of course there are better lines you can play against the French, which I know now, but at the time it seemed to work quite well. I went for this c4, going for an isolated queen's pawn, and I went for some very specific ideas here with the white pieces. Bishop to d3, and instead of playing my knight to f3 as people usually do in this structure and putting it on e5, I instead went for this very specific knight g to e2, same as what Josh did. And here, to highlight one of my ideas and one of my main preparations in this line, was that if black captures on c4, which usually black would in order to bring the bishop out to c4, and play knight bd7, castles knight b6, controlling the d5 square, bishop goes back to b3. And here, if black played the move bishop to f5, this would be similar to the Josh versus Friedman game, where white plays the move knight to g3, and after bishop g6, white would follow up with the move f4, intending to play the move f5 next. For example, h6, we capture followed by f5, bishop h7, and knight to e4 with already a crushing attack with f6 to follow. And instead, if black plays the move bishop to e7, my idea was to play the move queen to d3. So a very tricky idea. We stop bishop f5, but I'm also setting up a little trap here that if black ever plays the move pawn to h6, my idea is to use this pin along the long diagonal and just capture the pawn on h6. After black captures back, then I'm going to play this move queen to g6 check, and black cannot capture the queen because of the bishop pinning it, so the black king has to go to h8, and then I intended to take the pawn on h6. The knight here has to go to h7. If the king goes back, then probably I will not take the draw. I'll play on for a win by maybe playing knight g3, and I think white has sufficient attack here. If instead knight to h7, then I can follow up with bishop to c2, hitting the knight on h7. He has to play f5, and now the move knight to f4, threatening a deadly check on g6. I think the only way for black to stop this is maybe rook g8 or rook f6, and then I would play knight g6 check, rook takes, queen takes, and this was as far as my preparation went in terms of the ideal position. So after the move knight e2, what black played was h6 first. Okay, so I dropped the bishop back to h4, pawn takes, bishop takes, knight bd7, castles, knight b6. The bishop still drops back to the b3 square, of course. Bishop goes to g4, and now we still set up our queen and bishop battery and unpinning at the same time with the move queen to d3. Of course, he would like to play bishop g6 to kick our queen away, but he can't do this anymore because of this h6 inclusion. Instead, he played the move bishop takes e2, and even though I was still young and inexperienced at the time, I still understood the value of my bishops, so I gladly took here on e2. a5 was played, and bishop c2. So this is exactly what I wanted, this battery on the long diagonal, threatening bishop takes f6 and queen h7. Knight c to d5 was played, and I played the move knight to c3. So we're attacking the knight on d5 and threatening to capture the knight on f6 and then give checkmate on h7. g6 was played by black, and this is a good thing to notice when you have a battery along a diagonal like this, especially in isolated queen's pawn position. Once you provoke the weakening of the black king, especially with the move pawn to g6, then you can bring the bishop back to the long diagonal because it's no longer useful on this diagonal. Instead, you should switch it back to this diagonal. So we should play the move bishop b3 again. And here already black is under a lot of pressure because we're putting a lot of pressure on d5 and f6, and he makes a serious mistake by playing the move knight to c3, which I was of course very happy to see in the game. And here my plan works. I can play the move queen takes g6, king h8 was played, and here we just capture an f6. He has to give up the queen, and then we capture again. And here actually it's leading to mate. Captures, queen g6 check, queen takes h6 check, and we drop the bishop back to c2. So we're threatening checkmate on h7. The rook goes back, and now there's a nice checkmating pattern. First we check with the bishop, the king goes across, queen h7, and queen f7 is checkmate. So I finished the event, I think, in the top 10, but I didn't get a placing for my age group, but I was still quite happy with my result at the time. So I hope you learned something from this game. Thanks for watching this video, and I'll catch you on the next one.